Welcome to Gearwig's tutorial on Fury management from an opponent's perspective. Nice concise title there. Hordes players need to learn the basics of Fury management right away, but most new Warmachine players don't bother, as I don't think it applies to them. However, anytime you play against a Hordes opponent, you need to pay attention to their Fury management, for it can tip you off to errors they may have made or gambles they've taken. In this video, we'll look at the rules governing your opponent's control phase. We'll go over the rules for reaving Fury from dead war beasts. And finally, and most importantly, we'll go over the powerful but often limited ability to transfer damage from his warlock to his war beasts. A Hordes player's control phase is a 4-step process. The first step is to leech Fury. The warlock can remove Fury from beasts in his control area and take it himself, but only up to his maximum. Mosar here has a maximum Fury of 8, which is pretty good, but he held on to 2 Fury from his last turn, so he only has room to leech 6 from his beasts. When there aren't enough Fury points on his war beast to get up to his maximum, a warlock can leech from his life force, suffering 1 damage for every Fury he gains. This is often called cutting. Since there are 7 total Fury points out here on his beasts, no matter how he leeches, he'll have a beast with an extra Fury, and that beast will need to make a frenzy check. Before frenzy checks are made, but after leeching, the caster pays to upkeep his spells. Mosar has the Mirage spell on his Feral Warpwolf here. He'd like to pay that upkeep first, to make room for the extra Fury he has out there, but this is illegal. Be sure your opponent follows the specific order of leeching first and then upkeeping spells. After upkeeps are handled, the Hordes player must make a frenzy check for each war beast with any Fury points still on it. The check is a 2d6 roll, plus 1 for each Fury point on the beast. If the result is less than or equal to its threshold stat, the beast passes its check and can activate normally, although it must hold on to that excess Fury. If the check result is more than his threshold, the beast frenzies and makes 1 big attack on a nearby model. Threshold stats differ from beast to beast, but you can expect most to fail their checks about half the time if they have 1 Fury point on them. The Hordes player has no control over who the target of his beast's frenzy attack is. He works his way down a checklist of sorts. He'll attack an enemy model in his melee range first. So, if this fish person had moved into melee last turn, the frenzied Feral Warpwolf would attack him. He would ignore Wolflord Morag, even though he is also in the Feral's melee range. The next item on the checklist is a friendly model in the beast's melee range. With no fish person there, the Feral Warpwolf would frenzy on Morag, even though he's friendly. When a frenzied model has no other model in his melee range, and no enemy model is engaging him, the next step on the checklist is to charge the nearest model in his line of sight. If the Warpwolf Stalker at the top of the screen frenzied, he would charge Wolflord Morag. Even though he has an open charge lane to the enemy Wrestler across from him, Morag is closer, so he would be the frenzy target. A frenzy attack is 1 normal melee attack, the melee attack that does the most damage, and that attack roll and damage roll are both boosted. A frenzied war beast is considered to have activated, so he does not get to activate later in the activation phase. When you play against a Hordes player, you can use all this to your advantage. If you can fully expect one of their beasts to frenzy because he has too much Fury and he can't manage it, look to see what his probable target would be. If it looks like he's going to whack one of his own guys, it may be best not to send your guys in at him, because if you enter his melee range, you immediately switch his target to you. The last step in a Hordes player's control phase is to resolve all of the other control phase effects. Mosar's Mirage ability here allows his war beast to be placed within 2 inches of his current location. Mosar would like to use this now before the frenzy attacks. He can then point the wolf away from his friendly guy and toward the fish. And now, since Morag isn't in his front arc anymore, he can't be charged, and the frenzy target would become the fish. That would be great. But, just like before, there is a rigid order. Mosar must resolve all of the frenzy checks before any of the other control phase effects. When a Hordes player's war beasts die in their warlock's control area, the warlock can reave its fury, removing it from the beast and adding it to her total, up to her maximum, before the beast is removed. Reaving is optional, but if a warlock elects to reave a beast's fury, she must take all of it. Morvana's Stalker here has just been destroyed by Gatorman. She has a maximum fury stat of 7 and kept 1 from last turn, so she has room for 6 more. She'd like to take only 2 fury from the Stalker, so she'd still have room for the 4 fury from the Feral at the top of the screen. But that's against the rules. She must take all 4 from the Stalker or nothing. If she does decide to reave and takes all 4 fury, she won't have enough to remove all the fury from the Feral at the top of the screen. Then he'll need to make a frenzy check during her next control phase. She'd probably be better off not reaving any fury from the dying Stalker. She'll come up a little short of her max when she leeches from the Feral at the top, but she can fix that by cutting. That's probably a better scenario than having a War Beast make a frenzy check. A Warlock may reave fury from a beast if it would put her over her maximum, but any excess fury is lost. When the Feral at the top dies, she could still reave all 4 of its fury, but the 2 extra fury beyond her maximum are lost. There are 2 specific times when a Warlock cannot reave fury, and when you play a Hordes opponent you must watch out for these times because the rules are often overlooked. A Warlock may not reave fury when a beast is destroyed by a friendly attack. Secondly, a Warlock may not reave fury from a beast that was destroyed by transferring damage to it. Don't let your opponent spend fury to avoid damage only to get that fury back when the beast they transferred to dies. That is illegal. A Hordes player's ability to transfer damage from their Warlock to a Warbeast is a very powerful defense mechanism and can feel almost unfair to new opponents after they have a couple big 12 damage hits transferred harmlessly to a distant beast. New players need to know that this ability has many limitations, and clever opponents can get around them and drastically reduce a Warlock's survivability. There are 4 conditions that must be met for a Warlock to transfer damage. First, a Warlock must spend 1 fury for each transfer. This is the most obvious condition, but it can also be quite misleading. A Warlock holding 3 fury can't necessarily transfer 3 times, so it's important to see if all the other conditions are being met. The second condition requires the beast to be in the Warlock's control area. If a potential transfer target is out of range, either through your opponent's negligence or through some action of yours, you need not consider that beast for potential transfers. Thirdly, a Warlock can only transfer damage equal to the beast's remaining boxes. Any excess damage bounces back to the Warlock and can't itself be transferred. Pay attention to the relative health of a lock's potential transfer targets. A caster with 5 fury can't make much use of that if his last beast only has a few health. Lastly, a Warlock cannot transfer to a beast with fury on it equal to its maximum. This can potentially limit possible transfer targets if your opponent is careless, or if you have some special ability that can add fury to enemy beasts. Let's look at an example of a transfer situation. Kruger here would like to assassinate Jaga Jaga at range. His 3 ranged attacks should hit and roll boosted damage, which will usually be enough to kill her. But if she's able to transfer even 1 damage roll, it'll get real dicey, and she's sitting on 3 fury. It's not as bad as it looks for Kruger at first glance. The Wrestler at the bottom is sitting at his maximum fury of 4, so Jaga Jaga can't transfer to him at all. The Bull Snapper has 0 fury and is a legal target, but a quick look at his card shows he only has 2 boxes left. Jaga Jaga can transfer to him, but it won't help much. The Turtle at the top has plenty of boxes left and is below his maximum fury. He's a great target for transfers, but he is sitting at the edge of Jaga Jaga's control range. Kruger's Warden here can use some combination of telekinesis and a double-handed throw to move the turtle out of range. After the throw, the turtle becomes an illegal transfer target. Jaga Jaga's only legal transfer, the Bull Snapper, has 2 boxes, and that won't save her from Kruger's assassination run. It can be tough to keep track of all these Fury rules, especially when they don't apply to your army directly. But knowing the ins and outs of your opponent's force can give you an advantage when he is sloppy with his Fury management or when you are attempting an assassination run. Thank you for watching. You can see more Warmachine and Hordes tutorials, articles, and battle reports at gearwig.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and help the site out by subscribing to our YouTube channel.